Welcome to Dead Pets, the podcast about pet grief that celebrates the lives of the creatures who have changed ours. I'm your host, Elise Wild. We're back. I know, it's been 2 weeks. I had a major deadline at work that ran me into the ground, and I gotta get paid. But my goal is to do Dead Pets full time. I want to do 2 episodes a week, put out weekly newsletters, and create products that'll help people navigate their grief with everything I've learned from talking to so many people about their pets that have passed. If you enjoy Dead Pets, if it's touched something in your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. It's a really small thing you can do that means everything to me and will help Dead Pets keep growing. I love making this show. I feel like this is my purpose. This is fulfilling to me in a way that nothing has ever been, and I'm a journalist, a writer. I love my work. But talking to people about their pets that have died, who they still love so much, has been life-changing for me. Hearing from people that the podcast has touched them, has made their grief lighter, and has made the memories of their pets less painful is so cool and so special to me. For more Dead Pets, follow Dead Pets on Instagram and TikTok. There you can find pictures and videos of pets featured in each episode. And Dead Pets now has a newsletter. After every episode is recorded, edited, and published, for me, the story keeps going. Every interview prompts these new feelings, friendships, and epiphanies about our lives with our pets and what comes after. The newsletter is published once a month, and I share reflections and thoughts from each episode, my own grief journey from losing Dodge, my precious cat who was with me for 20 years, adventures of letting myself fall in love with a new kitten, news about the podcast, book reviews, other resources about pet grief, and I also include a roundup of fun pet news from around the internet, because who doesn't want that? If that sounds like something your heart needs, you can subscribe at www.deadpetspodcast.com. The newsletter is $5 a month or $40 a year. We also have a free tier where you can access some of this content. Today, I'm celebrating a little bit because we have our first ever partner. Tail Chapter is a free platform that gives you one place to celebrate, care for, and keep track of your pet. In just 1 minute, you can create a profile for your pet where you can save photos and memories, track important health information, set care reminders, and keep emergency information handy. You can also turn those memories into custom keepsakes so the story of your best friend lives somewhere beyond your camera roll. I said goodbye to Dodge a few months ago, and one of the hardest things about missing him is looking for pictures of him. It's only been a few months, but when I pull out my phone to look at photos of my sweet boy, I scroll and I scroll and I scroll and I scroll until I find him. It's hard to explain how seeing the photos of my daily life pass without a single new photo of him feels devastating all over again. With Tail Chapter, I can keep the story of him somewhere beyond my camera roll, and I can also turn those memories into custom keepsakes. So whether your pet is still stealing your spot on the couch or you're looking for a meaningful way to remember the one you've lost, Tail Chapter helps you keep their whole story in one place. Dead Pets has partnered with Tail Chapter to give away 1 year of premium access to one listener per episode of Season 2 of Dead Pets. That is a value of $74.99, and this is what you get. Unlimited pet profiles and photos, a health journal with expense tracking, care reminders, so a dashboard alert, plus email reminders the day before an appointment, food and activity log. You can share temporary view-only links with pet sitters and dog walkers, a 5% discount in the shop, unlimited personality reports, care tips, and memorial stories, and more. To enter to get that 1 free year of premium, sign up for the Dead Pets newsletter at www.deadpetspodcast.com. You do not have to sign up for the paid tier of the newsletter. You can sign up for the free tier, and the winner will be randomly selected. Entries for each episode will open the day the episode airs and close 6 days later. So if you sign up for the newsletter today until next Wednesday, you will be in the running. In the meantime, check out tailchapter.com. I have admired today's guest for a while. Annette and I both work in the same field, and a few years ago, I came across an essay she wrote for Outside Magazine titled, "How to Grieve for a Very Good Dog." I'll link the article in the show notes, and I encourage you to read it. I consider it required reading for anybody who might be struggling with the loss of their pet. On today's episode, Annette tells us about a very special girl named Sunny.
My dog, Sunny, was a yellow lab. She came into my life in 2005. Since early childhood, I've always been really connected to dogs and always drawn to dogs and having a dog. I had a previous yellow lab. When my son Austin was born, Sierra was just in the beginning stages of cancer. We ended up having to put her down when my son was like almost 2 years old. And I was just so heartbroken, and I just thought, I can't bear the thought of having another dog. But then My husband at the time, by the time my son was like 8 years old, I guess. He's like, I think we should get another dog. I'm like, really? And so he started hunting around online and found this family nearby in central Arizona where we lived that had just had a litter of puppies. And there was a list of the description of the puppies. We were going to get a chocolate lab, a brown lab, a male. We drove there and we were like, we're going to get this chocolate lab male. And it was at night and it was in the winter and it was cold, and this rural family had these puppies with the mother in this like doghouse that was an igloo. They had a hair dryer going to keep the dogs warm, like a hair dryer plugged in and sitting on the ground. I was like, wow. And so my son sat down on the ground where the puppies were in the igloo with the hair dryer, and this little yellow lab just climbed right into his lap. And so I feel emotional just talking about it. My husband said, I guess we're getting a yellow lab. Like, it was just like, oh, this dog wants to be with us. We took her home. She was smaller than the other puppies, but she was this adorable female yellow lab. And on the drive home, it was like an hour away, my husband had this really nice North Face down parka, and he put it on the back seat so that Sunny could lie there and be warm. And she threw up immediately on the parka. And at that moment, my son was really into reading the children's book series, A Series of Unfortunate Events. And there's a little baby named Sunny in that book, and she's always chewing on things and getting into trouble. So on the drive home, my son Austin said, I think we should name her Sunny. We had this very independent minded puppy. We had a dog back in our lives, and Sunny was just full of personality. I was in this marriage. We ended up getting divorced ultimately. It was a very tense marriage. We had a lot of issues when I was raising a young child. I was working full time as an editor for Backpacker magazine and having to travel a lot and trying to write stories. I was juggling a lot as a mom, and having a puppy in the mix was hard. I just added another layer of things. I was so heartbroken over the loss of Sierra that it took a while for Sunny to work her way into my heart. Between when Sunny was born and 2005 and in 2008, a lot happened. I was living in Arizona. Both my parents, who lived in Texas, were diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. On top of that, my husband and our issues were becoming more and more intolerable. He was having a hard time holding down a job and just had a lot of issues that made life really hard for me. Ultimately, by 2008, my husband and I had split, and he was out of the house and kind of off on his own journey, which did not involve very hands on parenting. So I was the full time parent. We moved both my parents from the assisted living facility in Texas, where they were, to Flagstaff. So I was taking care of two parents in assisted living, going through a divorce, trying to be the best mom I could to my son, who was dealing with his parents separating. My ex-husband loved dogs a lot too and would take Sunny on walks and everything. And so I wasn't fully responsible for Sunny all the time. When he left, then I was fully responsible for Sunny as well. At first, maybe the first couple months, it seemed like an extra burden. And now, on top of everything else, I get home from the assisted living facility and I help my son with his homework. And now Sunny needs to go on a walk before I make dinner. But it didn't take long for me to become very emotionally connected to Sunny. She was like my partner in handling these things. She was my emotional bedrock. And when I would go visit my parents at the assisted living, they were in such decline. My mom didn't even know who I was, and it was very emotionally traumatic. I would take Sunny with me and have her in the car, in my truck, and the assisted living place was right next to this national forest lands. And I knew as soon as I walked out of that building, me and Sunny were going to go on a hike from that parking lot. I would literally be in the room with my mom as she was in just a terrible state. And I'd look out the window and I could see Sunny in the truck. And I was like, all right, I can get through this. I'll be with Sunny soon. That was really important. Going through the divorce, my ex-husband was like gallivanting around town with all these different women and like the moms of my son's friends and just like the worst behavior in my book. I had to be the solid bedrock for Austin. I wasn't about to like go on a date. That was the last thing he needed to see based on the behavior of his father was for his mom to be out dating. So I just was very socially isolated. I was helping Austin and Sunny was helping me. Sunny just became so important to me. That was my outlet, was going and walking in the woods with Sunny. I was a college professor, like teaching a class. And I knew, like, when I get out of this class, Sunny and I are going to go on a hike. Or when I get out of assisted living, Sunny and I are going to go on a hike. When Austin goes off to school and I've made his lunch and his breakfast and everything, then Sunny and I are going to go on a hike. And it was the most intimate bond I've ever had, I guess, with another being. So many people that are connected to dogs know this. They're just there for you in a way that a spouse is not. They're always supportive and loving and no strings attached. Sometimes I would take Sunny with me into my mom's room at the assisted living place. And even though Sunny was so energetic and would jump and everything, not when there. She would just lie there at my mom's feet and let my mom pet her. And so she definitely knew to be calm. She was my little security blanket or whatever. Like I would take her with me in my truck all over the place so that then we could go on a hike right after. I had to do trips, story assignments for different magazines. I took her with me. It's sort of like me and Sunny raised Austin. Then Austin grew up and went to college. And then all of a sudden, I was in this empty house. In that regard, all I had was Sunny. I just knew when I walked through that door, Sunny's going to be there. She was on the smaller side for a lab. My dog Trudy now is 75 pounds. Sunny was maybe 55 pounds. So smaller. She was super into frisbees. She would have a signature pink frisbee was her thing. And every morning we would go out into this ball field and I would throw the frisbee and she could jump acrobatics to catch the frisbee. And she didn't want to ever let go of the frisbee. So when we went on walks, she insisted on carrying the frisbee. When we're walking through the neighborhood and through the forest, she was carrying the frisbee the whole time. Although sometimes she would switch the frisbee out, like in the forest, for a stick. And so she was very into carrying not sticks, but like logs. She would carry a branch that was like 5 feet long, literally. I have this picture of her. We were hiking through heavy snow, and she had this branch that was literally 10 feet long, covered with snow. I mean, it must have weighed like 30 pounds. And she would just hold it up and carry it down the trail to the point that if a bicycle was coming, the bicycle would have to get around her. It was so funny. And she was just so determined, very, very determined was part of her personality. It was like, I'm Sunny. I am in charge here and I'm going to carry this stick for 5 miles. She was very funny in her determination to carry a frisbee or a branch, no matter what. That was just part of her mission in life was like, if I'm on a walk, I'm carrying something in my mouth. And when we passed people, whenever if she had the giant stick or the pink frisbee in her mouth, they'd always say, that just made my day. I'm super into hiking and being out in nature. And fortunately, I've always in my adult life lived in places where I have access to public lands. And so she was very into hiking. That was our thing. At least 2 hikes a day, usually covering 7 to 8 miles total. She liked to go places and be in the passenger seat of my truck. and just sitting there like, here we go. She was just so persistent and determined that if she wanted something, she would not back down. You're eating and she wants your food, she's just going to bark at you. You give me that food, I'm going to keep barking at you. Or when I would talk on the phone and I wasn't paying attention to her, I was on the phone, she would bark at me because she's like, you need to pay attention to me. So it's pretty funny. Although it wasn't funny at the time, it was annoying. It was just so many days, like thousands of days, where we were just walking, she and I, in the woods together. She would always be about 5 feet ahead of me on the trail with her giant stick. And I would just be following behind her. And every now and then she'd turn her head with a stick just to make sure I was still back there. It was like she and I were synchronized in our movement through the forest. So many days were like that. That was my lifeline to sanity and feeling at peace and being able to regenerate so that I could go back to the assisted living facility the next day or whatever. Those were the best days, were just the everyday, like everyday experience of being in the woods with her. When my mom died and when my son went to college and I was in an empty house, having Sunny by my side was just so crucial. I also went through this whole PTSD experience when I had Sunny, where childhood trauma was coming up and I was having flashbacks, and I had to go through this therapy where I was working with a therapist who was walking me through these traumatic experiences from my childhood, basically triggering me. I had Sunny right next to me during those times. Would have my hands on her. I can't imagine how I would have gotten through that without her. My parents having Alzheimer's and both passing away, getting divorced, raising my son, and earning enough money to send him to college was no small feat. That was very hard. And then having him be in college and me being in an empty house. As a college professor, it was very demanding. I also was a full-time writer on top of that. And then lastly, in January of 2020, after my son graduated from college, I went through all this serious health stuff where I had a heart arrhythmia. And they were like, we don't know why you're having this. Like, you're perfectly healthy. And so I was just like, I'm just too stressed. All this stress was taking a toll. And so I decided to sell my house in Flagstaff, quit my job at NAU, and move to Cortez, Colorado, in southwestern Colorado. I bought a house that was much cheaper so that I wouldn't have a mortgage. And then COVID happened. My son came with me initially because of COVID, but then he left to go to LA. And so I had moved to this community where I knew absolutely no one, and I had just totally uprooted my life. It's a beautiful area, but I didn't have any friends, and it was COVID. I had Sunny. That was huge. Making that transition with Sunny is what made it possible. I don't know if I would have done it without her. She helped me cross that bridge to uprooting my life and moving to a totally new place. Because of how physically active we were, all the hiking and everything, Sunny was, even at the age of 14 and a half, she was healthy and hiking 5 miles a day up hilly through the forest and everything. But I noticed a lump on her shoulder. We went to the vet and it turned out to be a cancer, a tumor. They said, well, she's 14 and a half. They did an x-ray and they said it's probably spread. It was spread to her lungs. The vet was like, there's nothing we can do. And I was like, dog chemo has gotten much better over the last 5 years. I got in touch with a friend whose daughter was a vet that specialized in older dogs, and she lived in Texas, and she really helped me a lot with different medications, and I put Sunny on different types of chemo drugs and really focused on her diet. But by 2020, she started having other issues. The thing on her leg was growing and she was having a harder time getting around, and she was slowing down a little bit, but she was still Sunny. She still was wanting to carry a stick and all that stuff. I just kept giving her as much medical treatment as I possibly could. And so when COVID happened, my son has graduated from college, and I'm facing a future where Sunny's probably not going to be in it. What am I going to do? I decided to make the move to Cortez from Flagstaff while Sunny was still around. We moved here in May of 2020. Over the next year, her health definitely declined a lot. Summer of 2020 and fall of 2020 was really great. She loved water, and where I lived in Flagstaff, there was no water. There's a river here, and she would wade out into the river, and we would hike up into the mountains, and she would roll in the snow. So it was this really wonderful time of her getting to enjoy her favorite type of environment, rivers and snow and hiking, and just us connecting to this new place. It's not like one day they're fine and the next day they're not alive. It was this long, slow decline. And by towards the end, I had filled my whole house with yoga mats because I have this laminate flooring, and she was having such a hard time walking that she would slide and slip on the flooring. I had yoga mats everywhere to try and help her. She also lost control of her bowels, so she would have diarrhea on the yoga mats, and she couldn't sleep, and when it just got worse and worse. And you're having a conversation with my son and with the vet, and like, we're gonna need to put her down. It's this weird thing where you plan it logistically. Who should the vet be? Austin flew here from where he was living, and so it was all set up logistically. The day before, we tried to give Sunny her best day ever. We took her to the river, and she waded out into the river. And we made sausages and hamburger, and I always said her favorite food was lemon cake. She also loved Gouda cheese. We had Gouda cheese and lemon cake and sausages, and she ate it all. That night, like we always had done, Austin and I would sit on either side of Sunny and watch a movie. His whole childhood, he grew up with us sitting on the couch with Sunny in between us watching a movie or whatever. That was such a ritual of our family, a 3-person pack. The day came, and this really nice mobile vet named Jenny, she said, all right, it's going to be at noon. I had set up this quilt out in the yard on the grass where Sunny liked to lay, and me and Austin and Sunny went and we just sat on the quilt in the yard, and I left the gate open for the vet, and so she just came in. We didn't talk, and Sunny was just there, and she just did the thing. She put the tourniquet around Sunny's leg and pulled out this syringe with this red medicine. I had my hand on Sunny's chest, and she just injected Sunny's leg, and life left her body. Intellectually, I was like, okay, this is gonna happen. I've set it up. Like, it's happening because I planned it. But the moment that life left her body and she was not alive anymore, she was like a stone, I just freaked out. I started like shrieking. It came from this place I've never, ever been that emotionally distraught before. I mean, both my parents had died, previous dogs had died. I never had like this uncontrollable, just like, to the point Austin was like, Mom, oh my God. I was folded over Sunny's body. Then the vet left. So we carried her and we laid her on my bed. And I always also said that Sunny's favorite color was pink, like her collar was pink and everything. So I tied this pink ribbon, this sparkly pink ribbon around her neck. I anointed her with frankincense and bergamot. Then we put Sunny in the backseat of my truck. We had to drive an hour to Durango to take her to the crematorium. I sat in the back with her with my hands on her body, and we have to drive over these mountain passes when they were covered with snow, and that snow melt is what feeds the river. And I remember when we went over that pass, I was like, there she is. I feel her. Not only just like in the space of like the smallest spaces of the ground of the mountain, but also occupying the whole sky. She was on the one hand nowhere, but she was also everywhere. And I just felt this expansiveness of Sunny. We drove her to the crematorium and left her there, and it was started to snow, and so we stayed at this place in Durango. That night, Austin and I were standing on the porch, and there was this owl that was hooting. There's been different times when I felt like an owl would hoot for me when I needed a special message. It's not like I hear an owl hooting all the time. Very rarely. But there was an owl there, and both Austin and I were like, wow. I was facing life without Sunny, which was so much more painful than I ever could have anticipated.
What was it like to live without Sunny at first?
I was just alone in this town. I didn't know anybody. And the creature that had helped get me through the hardest times was gone. I was having a panic attack about it, to the point that I called the doctor and she prescribed a couple of Xanax. I felt like I was just falling apart. So I was like searching for, what am I going to do? That went on for a couple months where I just didn't feel like myself. Like at the lowest point, I would be in bed. I was like, I don't really have a reason to get out of bed. I was dangerously depressed. It was a crisis. It was a mental health crisis for sure. The editor at Outside contacted me and he's like, hey, would you do this story? Or I'm like, I can't do anything. I can't get out of bed. And he's like, well, why? And I'm like, I'm just totally devastated about the loss of my dog. I could write about that. I could write about that, but that's the only thing I could totally fathom writing at all. And he's like, okay. So that's how I wrote that essay, because I was actually trying to find help for myself, talking to experts. I was talking to a counselor who I interviewed for my story, but I was actually just trying to figure out for myself how to get through it. It helped a lot. I learned a lot. It helped me to realize I wasn't alone. I participated in this online pet loss support group. I went from being alone in my house and not being able to get out of bed to sitting with other people in a Zoom type setting, but they were all beside themselves. They were at various stages of pet loss. It was very enlightening for me to realize that I wasn't the only one that was going through this huge emotional trauma. The best part of my day was hiking with my dog, and it's how I experienced the outdoors. When I was hiking without Sunny, I just felt like I was naked. I was just crying the whole time. It was just around my house, this mesa area that's down the street from where I live, like 4 blocks away. And I was walking down the street, and I would just carry her leash with me. And this old man, he shouted out at me, "You need something to walk." The whole neighborhood knew, and I was just walking alone with the leash in my hand, and I know everybody was like, "Oh man, she's having a really hard time."
When you think of her now, what do you think of?
I think of her every day. I take my dog Trudy on walks, but pretty much every day I go on a walk by myself across this mesa area where I feel like it's just me and Sunny. And so I think about her and I talk to her. I feel like she's still very much part of my life.
What did Sunny teach you about this life?
Being determined and being persistent and optimistic. I have a book that's coming out in September, and it was a huge deal to write. I remember near the end of Sunny's life, and I was just trying to start writing the book. I was like, oh man, I just don't know if I can do this. And I was writing, and Sunny was feeling really bad and was lying down all the time. And when I was kind of trying to get this book started, and she just walked up to me and she just looked at me. I just took it as this message is like, you can do this. Over a period of 5 years, I persisted like the way Sunny did with carrying a 10-foot long stick. And I wrote the book, but I got it done. And in some ways, I honor Sunny by finishing that.
Where does she live on around you now?
I do have an altar in the kitchen with her photo and her dog tag and this kind of treat that she liked. I also have a book with pictures of her in another place. And then I have a place out in my yard where there's a statue of a dog that's sitting like a Buddha. And then next to it is one of her sticks with pink ribbons tied around it. I have pictures of her all over the house. People, if you were to come to my house, you'd be like, wow, you're really obsessed. I ended up writing 2 essays about the loss of a pet. I interviewed this woman, a professor named Mary O'Connor, who wrote this book, The Grieving Brain. And she explained that when you are living with another, like a spouse or a pet, and especially with a pet for so many years in this intimate relationship, that your brain is constantly like geolocating them. When you're at the office or the grocery store, your brain is like, I know Sunny's at home. And when I come home, I'm going to walk through the door and Sunny's going to be there. And so you're always geolocating that partner. And your brain is becomes wired over time. For me, 15 and a half years where my brain becomes wired to be attuned to what Sunny is doing and where she is and when I'm going to see her and all that and what she needs. And then all of a sudden, when that creature is gone, your brain is still going like, where is Sunny? I walk through the door and Sunny isn't there. Your neurobiology doesn't just switch just like that. This Mary O'Connor, who I talked to, said part of that neurobiology is always there. When you continue to think about them and reminisce about them, like that they live on in your brain in a way that it's like they're not gone completely.
If there is a rainbow bridge, an afterlife, an endless forest where you and Sunny will hike together eternally, what is the first thing you will say to her when you see her again?
I love you. I say it to her every day. I tell her every day I love her. So I will absolutely say I love you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with your friends. If you have a dead pet that you'd like to share, please send an email to deadpetsofficial@gmail.com. Dead Pets is a Wild Media Industries production. It is written and hosted by me, Elise Wild. Until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened. Anatola Franz.